So given 65 miles per hour, I want to convert that to kilometers per second, and I need some conversion factors to do that. So that's what step 2 is talking about, conversion formulas. I'm going to give those to you most of the time, except for in the case of metric prefixes. So knowing that there are 1,000 milliliters in a liter is something that you need to know. But knowing that there are 1.61 kilometers in a mile, you do not need to know in your head. I'll give that to you. Okay. We also need to be able to convert hours to seconds, and I think most of us would go to minutes first. So there are 60 minutes in 1 hour and 60 seconds in a minute. Okay, step 3 is really confusing the way that it's worded, but what it's saying in general terms is to use these conversion factors to make fractions that will make your units divide out based on what you have to start with. And I'm actually going to show you 2 different ways to do that, and both of the ways that I show you are acceptable when I ask you to show work, which is pretty much all the time. But any other way is not. So cross multiplication is not okay in this case. Okay. The most important part when doing these problems is actually showing your units. So please follow along as I'm doing this first one, and note that I'm putting in all of the units first before I put any numbers in. So my given again is 65 miles over hours, right? So I'm going to write that as a fraction.
Is that number 3?
Sort of, but you can write it in number 3. So what we're going to do, like I said, is make fractions out of the conversion factors that we had in step 2. So each of these fractions are going to get multiplied together. So do I have a conversion factor that uses miles? Yeah, the first one is, right? So whoever said bottom is correct. Miles is going to go on the bottom so that they divide out. That is, this is not the same as cancel out. That's not actually mathematically correct to say. So currently I have gotten rid of miles though, and if I stopped here my unit would be kilometers over hours. But kilometers is in the thing that I want as my answer, right? I do want kilometers on top. So I'm going to stop dealing with the stuff on top and leave it alone. My next fraction then is going to have to take care of the hours that are on the bottom. So hours is going to go on top up here because they're going to divide out across this. Because we're multiplying everything, even though they're not right next to each other, they will divide out. And you have minutes on the bottom, and then we can convert minutes to seconds. Okay? So the minutes would divide out. I'd be left with seconds, which matches those seconds. Does anybody have any questions about how I made the units, how I knew what to put on the top and bottom? We're going to do a couple more together before we practice on your own. But now that I've done that, so I still didn't put any numbers in yet, the reason this step is so important is because it tells me where to put the numbers now. So because my first conversion factor is 1.61 kilometers per 1 mile, then I put 1.61 kilometers over 1 mile. 1 hour equals 60 minutes, so I know to put 60 on the bottom in that case. And the same thing for seconds to minutes. So if you put all of your units in first, that will help you figure out where to put the numbers and whether or not you're supposed to be multiplying or dividing. Bless you. Okay, so the way that you would solve this in your calculator would essentially be to kind of put parentheses around all of this. So when you're typing it in, you'd have 65 over 1 times 1.61 over 1 times 1 over 60 times 1 over 60. Okay, and when you do that, you get, as your final answer, 0.029 kilometers per second. Okay, So all I did there was multiply fraction times fraction times fraction times fraction. I would like to show you the way that I learned how to do this because I think that it's a little bit easier to understand when you write it down, and it's also a lot easier to put into your calculator. So, does anybody still need this before I erase it? Alright, so let's do this the other way. And we're going to basically do it the same. If you look at your notes, it should look the same except for the fact that we have, instead of fractions, we're going to have actually a big table. So you're still starting with 65 miles per hour, but this time I'm going to draw one really long line. Okay? And instead of drawing a multiplication sign, I'm just going to draw a vertical line. My fractions are still going to stay the same. So I'll still have miles on the bottom here, and kilometers on top there. That's a K, sorry.
Is this still on step 3?
Yeah, this is just another way to show your work. This is the way I like to show my work. Which means this is the way I usually show my work in class. So you at least have to understand where I'm coming from. Alright, so miles divide out still. I'm back at kilometers again, so that's exactly the same as what I just did. So instead of writing a multiplication sign, I just draw another vertical line for my next fraction. And now I'm going to deal with hours to minutes, and then minutes to seconds. Okay, so that should look exactly the same except for the fact that it's in a table. Alright, and your numbers go in the same way as well. So 1.61 went on the top because that's with kilometers. 60 goes on the bottom, and 60 goes on the bottom again. So here's why I like this better. Because when I'm typing this into my calculator, this is how you do it, if I can draw my circle well. So you multiply, where is it? You multiply all of this and get a number. So basically you're saying 65 times 1.61. Then you multiply all of this and get 3,600 on the bottom. Then you divide. So when you're solving this table, like I said, the rule is multiply across the top, then multiply the bottom, then divide last. Okay, so you actually only have 3 steps when you're doing it in your calculator.